To me, is really the essence of what you uncovered, because that's the superpower, is being able to see things other people can't.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. What would it be worth to you and your business to have access to someone who can literally see what others can't? Someone who has the ability to help you align your leadership and improve your productivity and efficiency so you can get your products and services to market and make them profitable. Well, you're in luck, because today we're speaking with a BrandFace client who began her impressive career in the Navy as a helicopter pilot and commanding officer, during which time she led a squadron of 500 people and 17 aircraft, producing an average of 200 qualified students annually. Throughout her tenure, she focused on leadership development, productivity, and efficiency, which led to starting her own consulting company, where she's known today as the Aerial Advisor, helping tech and biotech companies with a holistic approach to monetizing their services. Let's learn about Shaun's story and how she helps tech companies find six figures in 60 minutes.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, Shaun.
Tanya, Michael, it is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And I appreciate being on the podcast today.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on here. To fly a helicopter. What? I want to learn to fly a helicopter. I need a time to learn how to fly a helicopter. I'm so impressed. Like, literally, my dad was a pilot, like a private pilot. We had Cessnas and that sort of thing all growing up. I did a little bit of flying, not much, but I've always been impressed with the helicopter pilots. I'm like, that's just another level.
I'll tell you what, it was a phenomenal experience. There's nothing like, being able to fly in the air, but it's not just flying, but being able to stop flying and hover in the air, is the other level that helicopter pilots get to experience. It's not just going forward, but it's stopping, it's going backwards and going side to side, and in ways that aircraft just can't. So it is a fantastic experience, and absolutely loved every moment flying.
I am certain. And I'm really curious, because we like to get to know the guest, and just some background and stuff when we get started, and we'll get into your brand and what you're doing for your clients and everything. But I'm really curious, like, what attracted you to the Navy? Two-part question. And did you always desire to be a pilot? Did they go together? Tell us a little background.
I'll answer the second question first, because that's a question I have asked myself for years. And the best answer I have is I looked up at the sky and I said, yeah. And, I wish I had a better, because this happened and this happened, and I could tell a better story, but it's that simple. It almost felt like a calling. And then when I had looked around, at colleges, universities, or started to look around, actually, I was going into 7th grade. My parents were on a trip. My dad on a business trip took my mom and I ended up walking around the grounds of the Naval Academy on my own for an hour or so. And I think that planted the seed of where I wanted to go. And then as time went on, I looked around at different places. And for whatever reason, I was drawn to water. I lived in a landlocked area. Lakes and a river were the closest thing to water. But I was really drawn to the ocean. And again, kind of like looking up in the air, it's what I was drawn to. And, that's where I set my path forward, is, following that intuition, but also making the steps to make it a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, this pales in comparison, and Michael has heard this story, and I won't tell the whole story here today, but my first flight was out of a barn loft. I thought that literally if I kind of flapped my arms and I could just sail a little bit, just a little farther, and wouldn't go straight down when I jumped out of there. I have always had a fascination with flying. Now it's flying like, Superman type flying, without the aid of machinery of any kind. But I have a fascination with it, Shaun. So one day we're going to have to come visit you and beg you to please take us flying so I can fulfill my childhood dream.
Sounds like a plan to me.
That sounds great. So What's interesting is you are now moving into the consulting space, taking all of the experience and the expertise and the journey. Tell me, now compared to what you're doing now, how did the Navy prepare you for the consulting you're doing today as the aerial advisor? And we'll talk more about that brand in a minute, but how did that prepare you?
Well, I'm going to use consulting and coaching together. They are definitely two different items, but they work a lot of times hand in hand with businesses. And on the coaching, which is holding people accountable, teaching and educate them on new skills that they need to learn to take that very next step, but not overwhelming them with too many things so they get afraid, so they don't take the very next step. And then providing them a pathway, and a clarity of being able to move forward. A lot of the things that I did in the Navy were just exactly that. We had to create a plan. We had to figure out there was always somebody that I was training behind me to fill my footsteps. And in many ways, being able to develop leaders and hold them accountable for the tasks at hand is what we help all of our clients with, you know, helping them, take that next step forward and being able to, implement what they need to do to actually change their own lives. So, what I did in the Navy, I would have never understood that unless I had gone on the journey I have gone on so far, to be able to explain how similar, but in so many ways, you know, I kind of was built for this.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And now why the migration or the work that you do so much in the tech and biotech space?
Well, with the tech and the biotech space, my purpose I see in life is to leave the planet better than when I found it. So many in the tech and biotech, and I will say truthfully, all small businesses, because they serve such a huge population, um, are able to, I'll say, many of them are trying to, make the world a better place and trying to support families themselves. And then the families of their employees. So they normally have very high values. And so it's one where I just found an alignment of values, an alignment of purpose that seemed to call to me. And I just really enjoyed, looking at it from that perspective. And again, it's more of what's calling to me instead of me pushing something on something else.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Makes sense.
Your mantra is think forward, choose excellence.
Mhm.
So tell us what you mean by that and why that's so important to you.
I thought you said you wanted me to limit this to 30 minutes.
I know. We can edit it down a little bit if we have to. It's okay.
All right. Quick version, think forward, choose excellence. All right. First, where did it come from? My last 6 years, I was in higher ed. And one of the things that I found with all of the midshipmen, students who are going to become Navy officers or Navy and Marine Corps officers, is they need an identity. They need something to hold on to. And I evolved this from different things. But at my last station, it was actually think forward, think excellence, because I was really trying to get down to 3 words. I was really trying, and I still end up with 4. And after a year, I really thought about it, and I added choose for myself. All right, so think forward. Too often we get inside ourselves and we don't think of what's happening next. We get focused on just the day to day, but we don't think about how our day to day impacts tomorrow and how that's going to come. And we don't think any time in the future and, okay, what do I need to be doing today to get that future? So that's the think forward. Choose excellence. All right. Excellence, you need to define it. Merriam-Webster is the quality of being excellent, which is kind of wah-wah, Charlie Brown teacher to me. So having your definition of what excellence means to you, and for me, it's a pattern of habits, that when done together, end up creating the outcomes that you choose to have happen again and again and again. So that is what
Mm-hmm.
excellence looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I invite everyone to figure out what their excellence looks like. But that's the measuring stick of which you're choosing the action. So you're thought forward, So you've thought of all of these options. Well, which, using that measuring stick of excellence, are you going to choose that really gets that outcome for you, the person, people around you, whether it's your customers, your employees? It really doesn't matter. But what is that best option that works for the most people that still gets you towards that excellence? So that's where Think Forward, Choose Excellence really comes from. It's actually a framework to make decisions.
I like it a lot.
I do. I love the word choose in it because that was a very selective and important word to add to that phrase.
Yeah, and it's like perfecting something and then building onto it. And I like the fact that you use both of those together, because we, being myopic, right? This no doubt would come from a helicopter pilot, right? Being myopic, right? We're either, like you said, entrenched in what we're doing right now. We got all these roads coming at us, and we got to solve these problems. Some of them are minor, some of them are tiny, but they're all time consuming and whatnot. And if we're not thinking, okay, next step, what are we doing inside of that builds to the next step, next step, next step, you can pull your head back up and you haven't gone anywhere. And that's really is so valuable to so many of the listeners, because we've all been there where, oh my goodness, I fixed all these protocols, but I looked up and I didn't have any customers. I didn't have a pipeline. I wasn't profitable. I didn't, so I love the fact that you've got that extra framework on there that says, okay, and also you got to be building towards that excellence that gets you where you really want to go. It's easy to get lost in that. And I guess conversely, you could do the same thing. Like if you're always thinking in the future, well, then you've got all this cancer in maybe you're spending more money than you are bringing in. And it can work in the other way too. So,
Shaun, I'm going to segue now into building the brand, because the Aerial Advisor is your brand identifier. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, tell us why you decided to come into the BrandFace program.
Well, I am running 2 lines of business. So that's where the consulting and the coaching comes in. And they're all run by me. And I felt like I was 2 people, and I really needed help from somebody outside to go, okay, what am I doing that crosses both of these, that I can talk coherently as a single entity, as a single person? The old phrase, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, is very appropriate. And so I needed help seeing what did my label really actually look like with what I was currently doing.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned to me split. You felt like you had split personality, right?
Oh, heavens, yes.
No
Yeah,
doubt we've heard that, right?
Yeah, it's like doing 2 different things. It's like, which hat am I wearing now? And again, am I Susan or am I Jane?
Exactly.
yeah. Because again, like you're addressing so many problems that you can help the listeners with. And maybe there's one listener, maybe there's thousands out there, right? But what you're addressing right here is a need that everybody has if you have different verticals. Because, we get it from questions. People are like, well, I have a podcast, or I am an author, or I am a speaker, or I am a coach, or I am a consultant. Which one do I need a brand for every one of them? No, you need your brand, because your brand is what brought about what you do to help people. So you're so on top of it, like I would expect. Was there anything that concerned you about jumping into the BrandFace program?
Well, one, you were all new to me, so anything new is always a little bit scary, and there's a concern like, is this really going to work?
Mm.
Are they going to be able to find, I'll say the common threads that actually, I'll say, knit me back together? And what I have found, through that is, the trust that you are both able to build very quickly. Let me say, this is worth trying, because I know I needed help, and I had been trying to figure this out on my own for probably more than a year. So having it into someone's hands who understood me like I wish I had understood myself was very, very helpful, and really overcame a lot of those fears.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Oh, we're so glad to hear that.
Yes, yes, because like you said, you seen us on a podcast or something. I can't remember exactly how we came into contact initially, but but you still, you don't always know people. And then you step into a situation and you're hopeful that these people can figure this out, right? and and it is what we do, and it's what it's what I feel like we were born to do, just like you feel you were born to do what you're doing now. And I love that the whole process of it is being able to help somebody see that label on the outside of the jar they feel tucked in. And it's common that a lot of people will say to us, well, I've been trying to figure this out a year, 5 years, 10 years,
Mhm.
and they still haven't come to that point. But I like to try and make them feel better about that situation, because I say to them, look, I don't know how to fly a helicopter. Why do you feel like you should know how to brand, right? Because you haven't spent your entire life doing that. So I understand that. What was the most eye-opening part of the process, Shaun?
I'll say how it came together and kind of how quickly. Like once I came in and I was presented with the brand identifier, I'll say, and I tried it on, and at first it feels like that stiff, leather coat that you haven't really worn, and it's not all that comfy. But then you think about it and you try it on again and you try it on again, and it soon becomes, this nice warm leather coat that you're like, oh yeah, I can see this. This is about right. And so that to me was, I'll say, some of the most surprising thing of how quickly that came to be, and how quickly, I'll say, it aligned a lot of questions that I had in my own mind that I didn't even know I had, of how am I going to talk about this? And it pulled them all together into a single thread. That was amazing.
I remember that day when we were doing your initial branding session and we were talking about variations, and you settled on it pretty much right away. It's like, okay, I really, really like that. I need to sit on it for a minute. I need to think about it. And that's pretty common, because you're thinking, like you said, that wonderful leather coat that you put on, you want that one to feel like made for you. But sometimes, like every great coat or great pair of shoes, you got to walk in it just a minute and then feel what that feels like. And as long as you feel like you can wear that quote suit every day, now we're on to something, and now we're headed in a good direction. But I always feel great coming out of those meetings when somebody's like it 90% there at least. It's like, okay, this is going to work. And the last time we chatted, you shared with me how much you felt like it really was you, and warmed my heart for sure.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
because it is very important that you wear it from now on. I mean, like part of the 3D is the display in the end. And we define, develop, and then we display. And like that concept seems like it should be intuitive to people, but then it's not for some reason. But you have to live that brand the rest of your life, because that's what works. It's like Tanya says it all the time. Well, you'd be like throwing a birthday party and not sending out any invitations, and then you wonder why nobody comes. You got to build a brand. That suit has to fit. You got to be really good and comfortable in it, and then you got to wear that suit, because that's what gets the people to come. And that you've got a handle on the most important part of it, I think.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
Well, what I love about it is I'll say I've been able to take ownership, and regardless of what I believe I will pivot to, regardless of what I stay into, I will still always be the aerial advisor, because it's that aerial perspective that shows the opportunities that you haven't seen yet. That, to me, is really the essence of what you uncovered, because that's the superpower, is being able to see things other people can't in
Oh,
different ways. That's the superpower. It's awesome. Like, you named my superpower.
I love it. I love it. And I love what you just said, regardless of whatever I pivot into in terms of the business, right? Sometimes our ideal customer shifts just a little bit, or sometimes a formula we have or a system we have for doing something changes a little bit. No doubt. I mean, pivoting happens all the time
Sure.
in business, but the one thing you want to be known for rarely ever
Rarely
changes.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. And it's one of those, like, I love it. Like we're using the clothes analogy, but it does simply fit, sized right.
Yep.
Exactly.
I love it. I
Exactly.
love it. So what if you had to name it, what did you think was the hardest part of the program?
Oh, me keeping time with it. It was definitely on me, and, just making sure I made the time to do the things that were necessary to review the items, because your team is amazing, and they are so, prompt with everything. So the hardest thing was, especially getting back after the year, I had put a focus on different things. And so making sure I got everything done was the hardest thing, but that was a me thing, and your team made it easy
Oh,
more
thank
than
you
anything
for that.
else.
Thank you so much. We're so proud and thankful of that
Yes.
team, because it is what it takes, and they do such a good job, and we appreciate them so much. And when clients say that, it just makes us that much happier that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we
Yes.
love them.
They're so good at it.
Yeah.
What was the easiest part for you?
Going back to the share drive and picking stuff out that I need on an at least weekly, if not every other day basis, and using it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll never forget the time I branded Michael, what, 12 years ago, some close to 12 years ago. And when he first said, "I can't believe how easy it is to do my marketing now. I just go in and I pick these 4 or 5 things, or give somebody access to this folder and say everything you need is in there, go get it," right? And he was just ecstatic about that. And that was the first time I realized, hey, that's a pretty big deal too.
Yeah. Because you don't know when opportunities arise. In fact, right before I got on this podcast, an opportunity for us to advertise came up. And all I literally needed to do was figure out whether we were going to do that. I could give a quick response to it. I don't have to deal with it now. I don't have to sit and wait for 2 weeks for some designer to show up and say, "Okay, what do you think about your ad?" Or, and me nitpick it apart. The girls will just take it, send it right to them. And I can't tell you the time that happens, and people are just like, "Well, I'll get you with my designer." And you're like, "Don't need it here. When can we get started?" And they're blown away. And they're like, "Tomorrow." Right. And when you think about building a business, and everybody needs more customers, I don't care how many you got. Right. And if you've got an opportunity to go into a marketing plan, and then you can start tomorrow, rather than waiting on some designer or some language arts guy to write your copy and stuff like that, you just lost 2 weeks. You lost a month sometimes. And who's got a month to lose? Nobody. So I'm glad you said that.
Oh, yeah. Tell us, Shaun, how your brand has already helped you.
I get the question, what's this aerial advisor thing? Like, that is my favorite question now, because it has opened the door and has brought down every single barrier that there could be. And I get to talk to the person.
Yeah.
And so I get to tell a story every time, and so the biggest thing is it breaks barriers. It's its own icebreaker.
Mm-hmm.
It
Because
sure is.
and I'll say that's huge, because when you need to talk to different people, they're like, "Well, who is this person?" "Well, the aerial advisor." "Well, what's that?"
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's
So
all.
glad you asked.
Yeah,
So glad
excellent.
you asked.
And giving them, just enough information, because it's rare that your logo by itself will be sitting somewhere, right? It's in context with other things like your elevator pitch and your visuals and things like that. So there's enough context there for somebody to see, okay, she does some type of coaching or consulting in this space, and aerial advisor is just that very compelling first glance. Is like, wow, that looks interesting. But to have them say, "Hey, tell me more. What is that?" Right? Is huge, really huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always a great one, because it's an easy way to start the conversation. And normally I'm not starting it anymore. They're like, "Tell me about this," which
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things I need it for, because it's gets the curiosity going more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is that initialization of a conversation that really, because we were talking to somebody on the podcast the other day, and they were talking about linguistics and neuroscience and, copy and how you write to get people's attention, the things that you can say that make a difference besides just, "Hi, how are you?" Which you use the point, we all do that, but it's really more of a salutation than it actually we care. Right. Because so many times people are like, "Well, how are you?" Well, you got a few minutes for me to tell you. They didn't really want to know. right? But when they ask you, what is Aerial Advisor? They want to know, like, and so you've got their ear now as your opportunity. Say, this is what I do, and this is how I do it, and this is who I help. And it's, I'm glad of that, because it's definitely the door opener.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shaun, I can't tell you what an honor it has been to work with you on building this brand, and our team just adores you, and you've been such a pleasure and a joy. And you guys, if you're watching the video version of this, you see the energy just like off the charts with Shaun. Every time we've met with her, it's been like this. So we thank you so much for having confidence in us. Appreciate you so much.
And we want to thank you for your service, obviously.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Always. And now I'd like to end on this note. I want you to tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, but then also talk just a moment about the assessment you have. It's called Rapid Altitude Assessment. Nice, brand worthy, right? And that can help tech companies find six figures in 60 minutes. Tell us about that.
All right. So my assessment, it looks at the fundamentals of business, at things, because as businesses go along, something gets lost. Looking at small business owners, startups, they have their passion and they're going and they're driving. But there's a lot more to the fundamentals of business than just that. And when you look at the fundamentals of business, when you do small tweaks along the way for each part, there's an exponential increase in growth that's possible. So that's where I'm able to find six figures in 60 minutes. And yeah, rapid altitude. Most of us want rapid growth, of course. So that is something, and that is the tool that I use, to be able to help those CEOs, those business owners be able to find the opportunity they are looking for to really get the life in the business that they really, really want. And I can be reached at shaun.mcandrew@tfce.io. Yes, TFCE is for Think Forward, Choose Excellence. And truthfully, I would love to interview one of your podcasters who's a business owner, because I am working on the next edition of my book, and I'm researching the business strategies that I have in the book that we know work. I'll share some of those business strategies and get their industry perspective on them. So I would love to hear from someone.
Perfect.
Yes.
We can definitely introduce you to people. We know a lot of podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
So we can definitely introduce you, and even some of our clients who are also podcasters. So
fantastic.
Shaun, thank you again. You are amazing, and we appreciate you so very much. And this is not the ending. This is just the beginning of our relationship.
Yes, it is.
Looking forward to it, and looking forward to working with both of you again in the future.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at brandfaceguide.com.